The small town of Silverwood had always been surrounded by mystery. Nestled deep within the forests, its foggy streets and ancient trees whispered stories of times long forgotten, but none were more whispered about than the legend of the Specters. On a crisp October evening, Emily, a curious historian, arrived in Silverwood to study its folklore. She'd heard the rumors of ghostly figures roaming the woods at night, and as an outsider, she was determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. The locals warned her, once the Specters find you, they don't leave you alone. But Emily wasn't one to be swayed by superstition. That night, under the full moon, she ventured into the forest with her journal and flashlight. The trees towered over her, their branches swaying eerily in the cold breeze. Every crack of a twig made her pause, but she pressed on. She had done her research. The Specters were said to be the souls of those who had lost their way in Silverwood, forever doomed to wander the forest, searching for a way out. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and a dense fog began to roll in. Emily's flashlight flickered and then went out. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn it back on. She could feel something watching her. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it. A faint figure, pale and translucent, drifting between the trees. Her heart raced. She backed away slowly, trying to keep calm, but the figure moved closer. Then another appeared, and another, until she was surrounded by the Specters, their hollow eyes fixated on her. One of the Specters, a woman in a tattered gown, stepped forward, her lips parted, and a soft voice echoed through the still air. "Help us! Free us!" Emily's fear gave way to confusion. "How? What happened to you?" she whispered. The woman's eyes, filled with sorrow, looked into Emily's. "We were lost, like you will be, but you can find the way." The Specters began to circle her, their forms shifting with the fog. Emily's breath quickened. "How do I help you?" she asked desperately. The woman pointed to the ground. Emily looked down and saw an old, worn compass half buried in the dirt. She picked it up, and as she held it, the Specters began to fade. The woman's voice echoed once more, "Follow the compass, find the light, and set us free." Before Emily could ask more, the Specters vanished into the night, leaving her alone in the eerie silence of the forest. Gripping the compass tightly, Emily felt a pull in her chest, an invisible force guiding her deeper into the woods. She followed its pull, her footsteps soft against the earth. Hours seemed to pass, or maybe only minutes. It was impossible to tell in the haze of fear and determination. But finally, the forest gave way to a clearing, and in the center stood a large, ancient oak tree, its bark glowing faintly in the moonlight. The compass pointed directly at the tree. Without hesitation, Emily placed the compass at its roots, and as she did, a soft light emanated from the tree, bathing the clearing in a warm glow. From the light emerged the Specters, no longer pale and tormented, but peaceful, their faces serene. One by one, they nodded in gratitude before disappearing into the light. Emily stood in awe, the warmth of the light washing over her. The forest felt alive in a way it hadn't before, as though the land itself had been freed from an ancient curse. As she made her way back to town, the fog lifted, revealing the path clearly before her. Silverwood was still a place of mystery, but the Specters no longer haunted its woods. Emily had given them peace, and in doing so, found her own way home. And though she returned to the town, she knew the story of the Specters would live on, not as a tale of terror, but of redemption. The next morning, Emily decided to visit the local tavern, the Whispering Pines, a place notorious for being the heart of town gossip. As she sipped her coffee by the window, she overheard a group of elderly locals talking in hushed tones. They glanced at her from time to time, aware of her presence. Sensing the opportunity, she approached them. "Excuse me, I heard some stories about the Specters in the forest. Do you know anything more about them?" she asked, hoping they'd reveal something new. One of the old men, his face worn with age and hardship, shook his head. "Miss, it's not wise to be asking questions about them Specters. Folks have gone missing, never returned." An older woman chimed in, her voice low. "Aye, many have gone after those spirits thinking they could help them or set them free, but they all ended up just like them, lost souls wandering the woods. You shouldn't have gone out there." "But," Emily insisted, "what if the Specters aren't evil? What if they need help?" The woman's eyes softened, but her voice remained stern. "That forest doesn't forgive easily. If you've crossed into their world, You may not come back the same. Determined to uncover more, Emily decided to explore the town archives. She visited the dusty records room in the town hall, which seemed untouched for years. With the help of the kind but eccentric archivist, Mr. Hawthorne, she began combing through old maps, diaries, and documents related to Silverwood's history. After hours of searching, she found it, an old map of the Silverwood forest. Unlike modern maps, this one showed landmarks that had long since disappeared, including an ancient settlement deep within the forest, Silverwood Village. She turned to Mr. Hawthorne. What happened to this village? He adjusted his glasses and leaned in to inspect the map. Ah, Silverwood Village, lost in time, as they say. A terrible plague swept through it over 100 years ago. The survivors left, and the forest reclaimed the rest. Some say the Specters are the souls of the villagers who perished there. Emily's mind raced. Could the settlement be connected to the Specters' curse? That night, Emily couldn't resist the pull of the map. Guided by the worn compass she had found in the woods, she set out again, this time with more resolve. The air was thick with tension, and the forest seemed to sense her presence. As midnight approached, she heard faint whispers riding the wind. They were clearer this time, almost beckoning her. And then they appeared. The Specters returned, their forms hovering among the trees, but they seemed less threatening, more inquisitive. The woman in the tattered gown, now more discernible, spoke first. "You are getting closer." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Closer to what?" "Our release," the woman replied softly. "You must find the heart of the forest, the village where we once lived." Emily nodded, clutching the compass tighter. "I'll find it." After hours of wandering deeper than she had ever dared, Emily stumbled upon it, the remains of Silverwood Village. Time had reduced it to ruins, but traces of the settlement remained. Stone foundations, decaying walls, and a crumbling bell tower in the center of the village. The Specters appeared again, standing among the ruins, their faces illuminated by the moonlight. They didn't speak this time. Instead, they pointed to the ground near the bell tower. Emily, heart pounding, knelt and began to dig. Beneath the soil she uncovered a weathered box. Inside was an old journal, written by the village's last leader. It detailed the horrors of the plague, but more importantly, it spoke of a ritual that could set the souls of the villagers free, a ritual that had never been completed. Emily read the final passage aloud. "Only by ringing the bell with pure intent and placing the compass at its base, may the souls trapped here find peace." Emily approached the bell tower, the compass in one hand and the journal in the other. The Specters gathered around her in silence, watching her every move. The bell was heavy with rust, but with all her strength, she managed to pull the rope. The sound echoed through the night, deep and haunting. As the bell tolled, she placed the compass at the base of the tower, just as the journal instructed. The air grew thick with energy. The Specters began to glow, their forms shimmering in the moonlight. Slowly, one by one, they began to dissolve into the light, their faces finally at peace. The woman in the gown lingered a moment longer, her eyes meeting Emily's. "Thank you," she whispered before fading away. Emily stood alone in the village, the silence comforting this time. She knew the curse had been lifted, the Specters freed from their eternal wandering. As she walked back through the forest, the once eerie woods now felt calm and welcoming, bathed in the soft light of the stars. Silverwood was no longer haunted, but Emily would carry the memories of the Specters and their story forever.